Well, those protests against immigration raids have been spreading in the U.S., and as we just heard, they're expected to further galvanize more protests this weekend. Several industries are also facing the weight of President Trump's immigration crackdown. Undocumented immigrants make up an estimated 15 to 20% or more of the U.S. workforce in industries like crop production, food processing, and construction, according to Goldman Sachs. To discuss specifically the impact on housing construction, we're joined by Kinloch Partners co-founder and CEO Bruce McNeilage. Bruce, it's good to see you back on the show, and this is an issue that we've spoken a little bit about before. I'm curious, first of all, as we see sort of an expansion of this crackdown, what you're seeing in your business, what you're hearing about from your colleagues.
Sure. So at first, in the first few weeks, we did see a little lull in construction. We haven't seen anything major lately, and I think it was just a little lull. I don't see any major problems on construction sites building homes, and we have such a deficit of homes and so many homes that need to be built in the United States. We just don't see ICE. We don't see any interruptions. And I've talked to different folks on job sites, and they said they haven't seen anyone. There haven't been any issues. And so I think that's good if you're in the home building business.
Now, remind us, Bruce, Kinloch Partners, you guys do build to rent primarily, and you're mostly centered in the Southeast. Is that correct? Is that, I wonder, do you think that sort of the lack of disruption is regional, or do you think that the housing industry is being spared to some extent?
Yes, we're in Georgia, Tennessee, and South Carolina, throughout those states. And regionally, the answer to your question is yes. There is a heavier percentage of Hispanic construction workers in Texas and California than there are in the Southeast. Now, there's still over 60% of your roofers are Hispanic, over 50% of your painters are Hispanic nationally. And I've never seen a roofing contractor, quite frankly, that is not Hispanic. I've never seen a painter and a painting crew that is not Hispanic. And so it's prevalent throughout the country. But in the Southeast, we see a little bit less. And in Texas and California, it's a higher percentage.
And Bruce, I'm just curious here, right? If if you've got a roofing company, or if you've got some kind of construction company or a contractor, I mean, even when I've been hired for various jobs, I'm not giving them my birth certificate. You present a driver's license in many cases, which many immigrants can get, even if they are not in this country legally. So what I guess is the responsibility of the employer in terms of trying to ensure that these folks are in the country legally?
That's an excellent question. And all these folks that get hired to build houses are subcontractors. The companies are asked to produce licenses, workman's compensation insurance certificates, and things like that. But then downline, the different workers of those subcontractors are usually not checked. So it's really the responsibility of the subcontractor, the roofing or the drywall, the companies that are doing the building to manage that. And it's not the responsibility of the home builder.
Bruce, how much is labor a constraint right now? I mean, we were having a discussion about housing more broadly earlier in the show, and it seems like demand is more of an issue because of higher rates right now. So in other words, is labor even an issue right now in trying to get new housing built?
Yeah, so for a while we were constrained by supply chain, right? And that seems to have solved itself. Labor is at a significant low, and it's very tough to find certain workers, especially the skilled trades. And so we don't see that changing. And we have to pay more and more for labor and more for workers, in addition to more for materials. And it costs more to build a house. The land costs more, the labor costs more, and the materials cost more. And all these things are adding to the cost of housing and making housing less affordable.
And so that brings me also to the issue of tariffs, right? You mentioned materials are going higher. Have you seen that sort of direct impact from the tariffs on some of your materials?
Yeah, a significant amount of your lumber comes from the Pacific Northwest, from Canada. And so we're taxing, or we have tariffs on that lumber, and it's tougher to get, and it's also costing more to buy that lumber. And so tariffs can have a negative effect. You may be looking at China or some of these other countries where you're putting tariffs on those countries, but you just are really hurting the United States and home building too when you put tariffs on lumber that's coming out of the Northwest, out of Canada.
And Bruce, how much of all of this are you able to recoup through raising the rents on your properties?
That's an excellent question. We've only been pushing rents about 2 to 3%, which we feel is very reasonable. We are eating a little bit of that as far as home building and what we're charging for rent, but we're trying to keep rent reasonable because people are just so strapped and looking for housing, whether they're trying to buy housing or rent housing. And for the first time in America's history, in all 50 MSAs in the country, it's now cheaper to rent a home than to buy a home, given these high interest rates environments that we're in. So we, quite frankly, can't keep up with it. We're 100% full, less maybe 1 or 2 houses in each city, and we don't see that slowing down at any time in the future.
Wow. Well, hope to catch up with you again soon, Bruce. Always appreciate your perspective. Thank you.